If you are predominantly negative, you're not going to create a happily ever after. Period. End of story. So we need to do that inner work. We need to start to build some positive momentum. Once you've identified, I've got these limiting beliefs or I've got these disempowering patterns, now there are processes that we can use to actually shift that stuff, to shift the old negative association, to shift the old negative pattern, to shift the old limiting belief. And a lot of people don't realize that we are in hyper suggestible states, aka hypnotic states, off and on throughout the day, every single day of our life. Every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Life Edge podcast. Today, I want to introduce our guest, Alicia Cramer. Alicia, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Chris.
Why don't you take a brief minute and tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you offer?
Sure. So I've been a business mindset coach for over a decade now. By trade, I'm a certified hypnotherapist, although I will say for those who are a little intimidated by the concept of hypnosis, that a lot of the work that I do is actually conversational in nature. It's more like coaching on steroids, using different processes that help to create shifts at the subconscious level of the mind. So we're basically cleaning up fears, doubts, insecurities, old self-imposed limiting beliefs, the things that are tripping up business owners, essentially those things that are in our own head, programmed in our mind, that are standing right between where we are and where we want to be.
Coaching has been around for a while, right? Business coaching, life coaching. But over the last, I would say 2 to 3 years, it's really there's been a major uptick. Will you just, if you can, use aliases, whatever you need to do you have some success stories that you could share real quickly of where somebody was at and how coaching helped them to really move the needle, especially with what you offer? Sure.
I've got several actually fresh in my mind because they're in the book that I'm working on right now. So I'll start with CT. I reference him in the book. That, of course, is his initials because I do give my clients a lot of anonymity. A lot of my clients are very successful. Mm-hmm. And although there's nothing wrong with getting help, there is a tendency, especially as people move up the social status ladder, to be a little bit more mindful of letting it be known that they are struggling with things. But when CT first came to me, he had been in business, online marketing in the weight loss industry for, I think it was almost 20 years, something like that, long time. And he had some really big wins. Big ones, the kind of launch where you're making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. And in the realm of playing with a lot of the big dogs that a lot of us have, seen, they've been on the internet for, a long time. And he had some pretty big losses, some pretty big financial losses, some really big botched attempts at some big launches that were very expensive and somewhat, I guess you could even say, humiliating, within his industry. And so when he came to me, he was actually on the downward spiral, you could say. His self-confidence was really significantly adversely affected. He was in not the best place financially. His business was starting to really struggle. And a lot of that has to do with the mindset, right? Because when we're not feeling empowered, we're not feeling good about ourselves, it's a downhill slide. And he was pretty much in that stage when he came to me. We worked together for, I think, a total of about 5 months. But by month 4, he actually had turned his business around and had over $1 million in the bank. So he went from in the red, sliding down the hill, feeling like he had no control, to marching back up the hill and, being in a very, very comfortable place financially. So that's one particular story. Now, I do want to say that not every story is quite so extreme, because I've had a lot of clients who they're maybe not in such dire straits, or maybe their goals are not quite as ambitious, right? They might come in and they're just saying, I'm having a little bit of trouble sleeping, or I want to make sure that I have a little bit more balance because my business is going great, but I am not taking as good care of myself as I should be. I don't feel like I'm as present with my children as I want to be, those types of things. And so we're focused more on smoothing that stuff out, which in many cases is just as rewarding, just as fulfilling as the monetary breakthroughs that people can have. But it, in many cases, is not given as much credit by outsiders looking in, right? Because especially as business owners, we're always sort of monitoring. Okay, well, how much revenue did it generate? Did we meet all of our KPIs and all of those things that kind of take away from what we as human beings really, really, really desire, which is more of an emotional thing. It's more of a heart-centered thing. It's feeling good about ourselves. It's feeling a sense of meaning and purpose in our life. It's feeling like when we're with our spouse or our children, we're present. It's those things that coaching actually can and does, in many cases, help smooth out those rough edges and get us pointed in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. For the average listener that maybe isn't in that same scenario, can you explain a little bit about how mindset, not even just in business, but in daily life, can really affect where you end up 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Well, it's huge. And we all can look at it very, very practically. So if you do an honest assessment of your attitude, your disposition, are you predominantly positive? Or do you have a tendency to get frustrated easily? Are you negative a lot of the time? Well, look at the type of results that you get. It's very telling. We have a tendency to try to trick ourselves. We think, if I just keep working hard, if I just keep pushing through the resistance that I'm feeling, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, whatever it is, maybe it'll go away and maybe I'm going to have a breakthrough and then everything is going to be wonderful and I'm going to live happily ever after and I'm going to have my magical happy outcome. And if you're really honest with yourself, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't. Yep. So we have to start to make those inner shifts so that we are mentally, emotionally, and I always like to say vibrationally. So anyone who has even a rudimentary understanding of the law of vibration, the law of attraction, they understand if you are predominantly negative, you're not going to create a happily ever after. Period. End of story. So we need to do that inner work. We need to start to build some positive momentum with our beliefs, with our expectations, with our associations, so that the actions that we're taking are getting better results. And if you're doing that, it's logical that your results are going to be far greater than if you're continuing to push through all the negativity.
Mm-hmm. So what does that process look like as far as doing some of that inner work that you keep mentioning?
So the inner work is a term that I use to include awareness of when we're encountering our old patterns of thought, those negative, disempowering, limiting beliefs. We can feel it. We feel it as negative emotion. It is then acknowledging that that is an issue for us that we need to be mindful about actually cleaning up, because that's that negative stuff I was just referring to pushing through. So once you've identified, I've got these limiting beliefs, or I've got these disempowering patterns, now there are processes that we can use to actually shift that stuff, to shift the old negative association, to shift the old negative pattern, to shift the old limiting belief. That can include, in many cases, any variety of different techniques. I do a lot of releasing processes with my clients, which helps to take the negative emotional charge off of memories and associations and self-image related stuff. There are techniques like EFT, that stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. I have a lot of EFT videos inside of my Inner Game Academy. Hypnosis, obviously, is a wonderful tool for that. Obviously, I'm going to be biased. I'm an advocate for reprogramming the subconscious. There really is no shortage of modalities. If you go online looking for solutions, you're going to find so many different processes, so many different techniques, so many things have sort of, risen to the forefront. What matters is that you are being mindful of those old patterns so that you can intentionally clean them up and replace them with empowering beliefs and behaviors that are helping you to achieve your goal instead of inhibiting you from achieving your goal.
I would love to dive a little more into hypnosis. I see you have your book behind you, Hypnosis for Success. And for some people, when they hear that word, they're immediately turned off for whatever reason. Would you just, in the simplest form, explain what hypnosis is, how it works, and how you're using it to really improve people's lives and get them through these limiting beliefs that they may have?
There are so many misconceptions about hypnosis. That was the inspiration for the book. When I had my general hypnotherapy practice, I was hearing the same questions, the same concerns over and over and over and over again. What a lot of people don't realize is that hypnosis is simply a process that we use to bypass the critical faculty of the mind, that conscious part of our mind that filters out the stuff that we see and hear. We bypass that, and then we're able to work at the subconscious level, which is where we are essentially programming our mind. And a lot of people don't realize that we are in hyper suggestible states, aka hypnotic states, off and on throughout the day, every single day of our life, every day. And so most people are inadvertently being programmed. And a lot of people are being programmed with some less than ideal stuff. So when you're watching the news and you feel stress, guess what? You're in a heightened state of suggestibility. Not so good to be programming yourself with that stuff. You go to the doctor. Oh, got a little ache, got a little pain. Something's not feeling good. You've got an association. Oh boy, what if he tells me some real bad news? Guess what, my friend? You are in a heightened state of suggestibility, highly, highly hypnotically influence. And if something bad comes out of his mouth, even if it's inaccurate, it's probably going to program you in a less than desirable way. So basically what we're doing is we're using proven strategies to get the mind in that heightened state of suggestibility, and we're actually choosing good stuff to put in your subconscious mind. And if I could simplify it as much as possible, it would be just that.
That's great. How do you'd mentioned stress as one of like the signals that you can tell you're in a suggestive state of mind. What are some of the other potential ways that you can tell, hey, I need to pay attention to what I'm allowing in my life right now, because I'm in this very suggestible state right now? So what are some other red flags or ways that someone can realize they're in that state? Sure.
So one way to really simplify it for people is anytime you're feeling intense emotion. Intense emotion is very, very much linked to creating programming in the subconscious mind. So a lot of our negative programs we formed when we were highly emotionally charged, whether that's positive or negative. So when you were little and grandma made the fresh cookies and you had that excitement, and now every time you smell that smell, you feel that excitement because it got anchored deep into your subconscious mind. When you were afraid, that scary movie was on and you were, so nervous, so afraid. And in that moment, you formed this deep-rooted fear of clowns or whatever, right? That carries on through your whole life. Well, we form a lot of really inaccurate conclusions when we're in a negative state of mind. And that also tends to be when we're highly suggestible. And so a lot of people don't realize that the stuff that you're bumping up against in many cases are these silly, nonsensical beliefs, these conclusions that you came to in these moments throughout your life when you were upset, you were discouraged. And when we're obviously in a positive state, you go to a Tony Robbins event and he gets you all amped up, right? And he's programming you with all that good stuff. That's fantastic. But we also need to be mindful that most of us are not in that positive state all day, every day, putting good stuff in our minds. Most of us are somewhat reactive and getting triggered by old negative associations, slipping into some of those lower states like fear, overwhelm, anger, frustration, sadness. And if it's just a little bit, it's probably not that big of a deal, right? Yeah. But if you're chronically feeling that type of negativity, when I was going through my hypnotherapy training, what was taught right in the beginning is most people are walking around in a chronic state of hypnosis. We actually are de-hypnotizing the client before we ever even start putting the good stuff in. We have to get them out of the trance because so many people are living in this reactionary state from overstimulation.
Mm-hmm. So you had mentioned a lot about these subconscious beliefs that we have that we're reacting from. How do we change those beliefs so that we're not being held back so much or having so much negativity in our daily lives?
That's what my new book is about. It's about first identifying that you are triggered, that you've just come head to head with one of your old limiting beliefs. One of the sort of metaphors, if you will, that I like to use is, let's say somebody has a fear of something, which is super common, right? They have a fear of rejection. They have a fear of public speaking. They've got a fear of disapproval. They've got a fear of something, right? Especially in business, but in life in general. People are encountering all sorts of self-imposed limitations because of fear. And so if left unaddressed, unacknowledged, that fear will continue to be an active program in your subconscious mind, always stopping you from doing the thing that your mind is afraid could potentially be an outcome of your action. So in the moment that you feel that fear, just like the child, if anybody listening has children, right? We all have been there, done that, experienced it with our children. We experienced it ourselves as children, laying in bed. You can't fall asleep. Your mind is racing. You're so sure there is something scary in that closet. Absolutely convinced it's a monster, a scary monster. If I fall asleep, he's going to come and eat me or some crazy thing like that, right? And if you just will get up, turn on the light, and go look in the closet, you're going to see there's no monster in there. It's just a pile of dirty laundry. But if you don't get up, turn on the light, and look, it will antagonize you until literally your body shuts down and falls asleep out of sheer exhaustion, right? This is how most people are living their lives. They're bumping up against their limiting belief, but they're not willing to turn the light on, to look at it, to see it for what it really is. And when we're able to do that, in many cases, we see just how irrational or nonsensical that actually is. And we're able to actually release that association. We're able to release the negative emotional charge that is so often associated with those actions or those behaviors or that outcome or whatever it is. And then from there, it's not just about releasing the fear. We've got to reprogram the subconscious mind. So now we're reaching for, well, what would I prefer instead? So if my fear is that I'm going to be ridiculed if I get on that stage and I speak in front of all of those people, they're going to think I'm unqualified, I'm a terrible speaker, I stumbled over my words, and you've got all of these, you're basically visualizing what you don't want, right? So now you look at the fear honestly and objectively. I like to teach this releasing process where you're releasing the negative emotional charge. And when you feel yourself shift, when you feel the release of the intense emotion, that energy, now you can ask yourself, well, what would I prefer? And now your mind begins to reach for a new visualization, seeing yourself up on that stage, feeling calm, confident, looking out into the audience, seeing people looking back at you with smiles or looking like they're so interested in what you have to say. And right then and there, you just reprogrammed. And if you're able to be intentional about that and really get into that with a lot of positive energy, you're essentially doing some self-hypnosis on yourself, some intentional subconscious reprogramming, and you begin to create new beliefs, new expectations, and essentially you're programming yourself to take different actions, to behave differently, to think differently, to feel differently. And before you know it, you're standing up on that stage and you're like, that was good. Because now you have a different known association in your subconscious mind with that experience.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to me because it's something I've experienced even in my own life. The first time you record a podcast or you make a YouTube video, you have all these fears built up of, what is the other person on the other end going to think of me? What if they don't like what I'm saying or don't like how I'm interviewing people or whatnot? But once you get through that initial stage and you do it, it's like you said, in a sense, reprogrammed myself to think like, well, no, I'm getting feedback that says people enjoy the content I'm putting out there and they actually enjoy the interviews and the videos and the things that we're producing. And I had all this fear that I developed myself that was didn't even really exist. It wasn't reality. It was just my fake reality that I had developed.
Yeah. What I say is that a lot of these things seem so obvious once we learn them, but we're not taught. And that's the biggest challenge for most of us. The other challenge is you can know something and still keep defaulting to your old reaction, your old emotional association. And so it does require some self-discipline to be mindful, to be aware, and to keep pulling yourself back into doing the inner work. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, what happens is, before you know it, you've just been reacting the same old way that you've always reacted, defaulting to the same old beliefs and expectations, just like you always had. And then you're wondering, why am I struggling in this area of my life? So these are things that you don't need. You don't need an expert. You don't need a coach. You don't need a hypnotherapist. But it helps a lot because a lot of times these are our blind spots. We're so accustomed to feeling that same old way that we feel the discomfort. We don't like the discomfort, but it almost feels so familiar that it's not like it's not jarring, right? It's like, oh, hello, my old friend, you're going to make me miserable again.
That's funny. What is some of the, because I'm sure you when you're going through working with your clients, I'm sure on your end there's a point where you see things click for them, where you see like this change happen. What is some of the responses you're getting from your clients when they finally have that realization and they maybe overcome some of these major limiting beliefs? What is that like?
The way that it's expressed is always a little bit different, but in essence, it pretty much always feels exactly the same. It's really, if we could summarize it, I would say it's a sincere feeling of gratitude. When someone, and we've all had these experiences, when someone has been struggling with something for a very, very, very long time, you sometimes start to even doubt that it's possible for you to experience anything different. And to be able to witness that, to see it, to see the tangible evidence in your life where your mind can try to do its little trickery, right? How it loves to say, oh, that was just a coincidence. Oh, I think that was just a fluke. But when it's real and there is no disputing it, you can't help but feel that wave of gratitude come over you. It's like you feel it in every fiber of your being. And that is probably one of the most fulfilling parts of my job, because I get to experience that on a regular basis. So I feel a little spoiled, I have to say. But really, I'm so, so happy when I witness that in anyone, because it is our divine right to have a good life. It is our divine right to fulfill our deepest inner calling, to feel a sense of purpose in our life, to feel a sense of meaning, to have wonderful relationships, to experience abundance. And so I think we all need to celebrate each other a little bit more. And then maybe we'll normalize getting through a lot of this silly stuff that we're all sort of bumping up against, instead of feeling so ashamed that we're not as good as we think we should be, not as successful as we think we should be. Oh, I've got this thing that I keep struggling with, therefore I'm less than. We're not. We're just programmed poorly. This leads right into another question that I had just listening. You had mentioned earlier that we're very overstimulated, and a lot of us are walking around in a state of a constant state of trance, I think is the word I used.
Yeah. And do you think that is how humanity has always been, or is it because of technology increasing the amount of comparison that we can do to others now? When TV came around, and then you have full-time news, and then internet, and then social media, are we seeing is that why we're seeing such a boom in a lot of this coaching that's going on? Is because we've just, as a society, have become more and more, I don't know how to say it, but like,
we're hyperstimulated, we're overstimulated, we're overbombarded, we're getting pulled in so many different directions. So early on in advertising, people became very wise to the way the human mind works, and they used that to their advantage. They understood that there are ways that you could influence someone by controlling their emotional state and putting in suggestions this product is going to make you thin and beautiful and desirable, right? And now look at how much we're bombarded by messages every day, every day. Everyone else's agenda for our life, how we spend our money, what we do with our time, where we put our focus. So here we are, and we're in this fast moving time where, I mean, even, I'm only 42, but I can say, just even looking back to when I was little, yeah, there was TV, there was radio, you could listen to records. And there still was a fair amount of stimulation, but not like it is today. And so we are really being pulled. Our psyche is being pulled. Our desires are being influenced. Our motivations are being influenced. There's so much conflict and expansion all happening simultaneously that we have to just remember that we don't have to participate in all of it. We don't. So some people are, and I see this a lot, right? Some people are sort of sucked into the current of, well, I've got to do this social media. I've got to do that thing over here. I've got to do this, and that, right? Because that's what we're told we're supposed to do. You have to do all of those things. You have to, right?
Yep.
And so before you know it, it's the end of the day. You're dead ass tired. You've got nothing left inside of you. And your mind is like, bah, like crazy, right? But if you can unplug and you can center yourself and you can start to be more deliberate and intentional about where you're putting your focus, where you're putting your energy, what are your intentions? Well, now you're going to notice that a lot of those things that you were just accepting as I should do or I need to do, a lot of those things they're irrelevant. And so we need to just become a bit more mindful that a lot of this overstimulation, although yes, it is a fact of life, we do have some control over that. And the more that we take ownership of our own mind, the more we're going to find that we're less likely to be influenced by everybody else's agenda. And we become more of the empowered, deliberate creator in our own lives.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Because I just feel right now, you can look around, especially now with the advent of TikTok, and people are just so lost constantly, but it looks like they're moving so fast to get things done, but nothing's really getting accomplished because they're comparing themselves to this and that, and just the crazy world we live in right now.
It is. And one of the things that I remind myself of is that even though there's a lot of bad, there's also a lot of good. And so if we remember that this is a law-based universe that we live in, and one of the laws in this universe is the law of polarity. We know it as right or wrong, good or bad, right? But what we need to remember is that what it essentially is saying is if you have one side of something, there has to be an equal and opposite side of it. So you cannot have a top without a bottom, a right without a left. You cannot have a good without a bad, because if you didn't have one side, there would be no frame of reference for it, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people would refer to that as duality. You can call it whatever you want. But the thing that we need to remember is when you're watching the news and it is shaking you to your core, you're like, what the hell is going on in our world? That intense negative emotion that you're experiencing as you see what you perceive to be pretty bad, that also means that there must be a lot of good. And we have been given the ability to choose where we're going to focus. And so it's not about putting your head in the sand and pretending that the bad things aren't happening. It's acknowledging, yeah, the bad things are happening, but there's also a lot of good things happening. And I'm going to be an advocate for the good. I'm going to put my focus on creating more of the good, not on warring against the bad, not on fighting against the bad, but on bringing more goodness into the situation. Because when we are fighting against, pushing against, resisting, rallying against, what are we essentially doing? We're just projecting more negativity into that thing. Whereas what do the most transformational leaders of any generation do? They come in with love, they come in with light, they come in with positivity, and they show people that something else is possible. And then people are able to rise up above that negativity and go through that transformational process of healing and repairing and rebuilding.
Yeah, thank you for that just perspective shift, because I feel a lot of times we just get stuck on what the negativity is and how do we just stop the negativity rather than recognizing that there is an opposite reaction in the sense, and that there is good out in the world, and that if we shine more light on that good, it helps to light up the darkness in the sense of the negativity. So, yeah, thank you. As we start to wrap up, there is one question I like to ask all the guests, and that is, what is one important lesson that you've learned in life do you want to share with the listeners?
The one that's coming to mind, and there have been a lot, I used to take life very seriously. In fact, my husband would call me out on it quite often. And what I started to learn was that softer approach, that more lighthearted approach to life and business is where we get the most joy, the most fulfillment. And honestly, we're far more productive in that state as well. So for all of my high achievers, the mind would have you believe that you have to be stressed out, you have to be over hyper focused, you have to be all tense, right? Mm-hmm. I adhere to my schedule like it is the gospel. No kidding, right? But you don't have to be so damn intense about it. Soften up, lighten up, enjoy the little things. That's why we're all doing this, right? We're all setting goals for the better life. We're all reaching for more joy, more fulfillment, more abundance, more freedom. But if you're not allowing yourself to enjoy the journey, what good is any of it? Because you can have all the money you want in the bank, but if you're fucking miserable, you're still miserable.
Yeah. Wow. Such a great answer. Thank you, Alicia, so much for coming on and joining us today on the Life Edge podcast. For anyone that's looking to get in touch with Alicia, I will make sure to include links to her website as well as social media down below. And I think for the Inner Game Academy, you also offer a 30-day free trial. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I'll also include links below for that. So if you want to check out more of what Alicia offers with the Inner Game Academy and really step into changing your life, check out her trial. Check out her programming. I've been going through it. It's amazing. It's great. But again, Alicia, thank you so much for being a guest on the Life Edge podcast.
Thanks so much, Chris.